Hey there everyone, so today we are actually comparing the most efficient models. So these are one of the smallest models that are offered by their companies, respective AI providers, and these are non-thinking models. And most of the models over here, for example Gemma 327B, Mistral 3.1, Llama 4 Scout, Mistral 3.2, all these models you can actually download and run on your device. So when we talk about these models, where do they stand and which is the best one out of all of these? Let's have a look. So the models that we are going to compare today is right in front of you. If I head over to my website, if I go to best efficient model that is good in reasoning, that is Gemma 327B. Best efficient max models is also Gemma 327B. And best efficient coding model is Llama 4 Scout. So how does that change with the release of Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite and the newer Mistral 3.2? Let's find out. We'll be looking at reasoning and then max, and then finally we'll be doing a coding test between Llama, Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite and Mistral 3.2. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the first question and it's actually pretty easy. I call this the lion's question and it's kind of a riddle and the question is right in front of you. Let's look at the scores. Starting off with Gemma 327B, it scores a 10, Mistral a 10, Llama also 10, GPT 4.1 Nano 10, Gemini 2.5 Flash 10 as well, and Mistral 3.2 gets 10 as well. So this is a very simple question, but just a year back, models of this size were not able to solve this. And look at now, every model is getting a 10 on 10. This is what we are aiming for. As we move on to harder and harder questions, the score does drop. But what we anticipate with future models is, even in those questions, we start to get a 10 on 10. The model is very confident with its response. Having said that, let's move on to the next question. That is the starting point. So this question is slightly modified version of the North Pole question that was going viral a year back. That was the question which started all the debate about whether LLMs understand spatial reasoning. So here we are actually using a slightly modified version of that. Let's look at the scores. Starting off with Gemma 327B, it scores a 10 out of 10. Mistral 3.1, it scores an 8 out of 10. That's the reason, in my previous video was not the best. Llama 4 Scout scores a 10 out of 10. Nice. GPT 4.1 scores a 9 out of 10. Gemini 2.5 Flash a 10 on 10 and Mistral 3.2 a 9 out of 10. So here you can see slowly as we are moving to harder and harder questions, the scores are decreasing in some models. If we just compare the Mistral model, Mistral 3.1 and Mistral 3.2, you can see there is slight improvement. When we move on to harder and harder questions, we'll see that if the difference is big or not. So far, Gemma and Llama and Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite are giving a tough competition. Previously these questions were enough to actually kind of defeat all these models. But now they have become so smarter that I am asking water tank and letters question to them. This, if you don't know, is out of my main reasoning questions, and this is something that I asked to the flagship non-reasoning models. Having said that, let's move on to the water tank question. Even this question, if you have a good read, test the spatial reasoning of the models. So how do they perform? Let's start off with Gemma 327B. It scores an 8 out of 10, and now you start to see a decline in performance because we are getting into harder question. What about Mistral 3.1? It scores a 7 out of 10. As I said, Llama 4 Scout, it just scores a 2 out of 10. A significant drop, guys. I don't know what happened, but it is what it is. What about GPT 4.1 Nano? It scores a 10 out of 10. Absolutely brilliant, guys. Many flagship models are not able to do that. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, it scores an 8 out of 10. Moving on with Mistral 3.2, it scores a 10 out of 10 as well. And now you can see the difference between Mistral 3.1 and 3.2 is slowly increasing. So now the odds have actually changed. The best model till now is GPT 4.1 Nano. I was thinking of stopping my test over here, but if you look at GPT 4.1 Nano and Mistral 3.2, they are scoring either 10 or 9 in the tests. So I thought that, okay, let me bring up even harder question from my main reasoning test, and that is the letters problem. And this is a bit difficult. Let's look at the scores. Talking about Gemma 327B, it scores a 1 out of 10. As I said, talking about Mistral 3.1, it scores a 0. Llama 4 Scout, 0. GPT 4.1 Nano, 0. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, 0. Up until this point, you understand that this water tank question is kind of a place where these models are starting to plateau. And you can head over to my website and try questions that are harder than this, and these models will most likely get a 0. Also, you might start to assume that Mistral 3.2 will also come up with a 1 or a 0. But as a shocker, it scores 4 out of 10. It's low, but just compare it with other models. All models are getting a 0 and the previous best reasoning model got 1 out of 10. And with that, the total scores. Llama 327B gets a 29 out of 40, Mistral 3.1 25, Llama 4 Scout 22, GPT 4.1 Nano 29 again, Gemini 2.5 Flash 28, and Mistral it scores a 33. You can see the GPT 4.1 Nano model actually ties with the Gemma 327B on the second place, but Mistral 3.2 is clearly ahead. And you can see the difference between Mistral 3.1 and 3.2 is pretty significant. By the way, if I forgot to say that, it's a 24 billion model. So the best reasoning model will now become Mistral Small 3.2 24B. Gemma 327B on its time of release actually shocked many people how good it was, being just 27 billion parameters, and Mistral is even smaller than that and is outperforming it. It is so nice to see smaller and smaller models becoming smarter. Let's move on to the next section, and that is max. You can see we first start off with the easy max question, and you can have a look at it. It's very simple. What are the scores? Gemma gets a 10, Mistral a 10, Llama 10, GPT 4.1 Nano a 10 as well, Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite 10, and Mistral 3.2 10. So you can see when we start with easy questions, they get a 10 out of 10. And as I said before, 1 year back, this was not the case. I do personally think that it's not the intelligence that is increasing significantly, but the models are just getting aligned to what it should respond and what we actually want from them. But keeping that aside, let's move on to a slightly harder question that is based on Bodmass. So in this question, again Gemma gets a 10, Mistral gets a 9, Llama 4 gets a 10, GPT 4.1 gets a 10, Gemini 2.5 Flash a 10, and Mistral 3.2 gets a 9. So now you can see we have moved on to a slightly harder question and scores are starting to decrease, with Mistral 3.1 and 3.2 scoring the same, whereas the rest of them got a 10. Let's move on to the next question. You can have a look at it. It's just a single sentence question, but getting it right was kind of difficult for the earlier flagship models. But now let's look at what these efficient models do. Talking about Gemma 327B, it scores a 10 out of 10. Can you even imagine? When Gemma was released, even I was shocked looking at this score. A question that even the flagship models were not able to get it completely correct, Gemma was able to do it. But now newer models have arrived and we'll look at their performance. Talking about Mistral 3.1, it scores a 7 out of 10. Llama 4 Scout, just a 5 out of 10. And now you can see, just like reasoning, Llama 4 Scout is starting to get behind. What about GPT 4.1 Nano? It scores a 7 out of 10 as well. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, it scores a 9 out of 10. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite is holding on pretty good. What about the new Mistral Small 3.2? It scored a 6 out of 10. You can see in this particular question, Llama 4 Scout performed the worst, followed by Mistral Small 3.2. But Gemma 327B is holding on pretty good. But will things change? We'll see. These three questions were something that I used to ask with these models, but now you can have a look at the scores. In almost all of them, the scores are above 5. This means I have to ask questions from my main test bench. That is the level 1 max question from my main test bench. And from this point on, the questions will become harder and harder. Let's have a look. What about Gemma 327B? It scores a 5 out of 10. Mistral a 0 out of 10. Llama 4 Scout a 1 out of 10. GPT 4.1 6. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite 9, and Mistral a 6. Now you can see if you look at the total performance, Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite is holding on pretty good, whereas we are clearly able to see that the Mistral model is not very good in max, and even the newer model doesn't have significant improvements. And with the Llama model, you can see it is starting to fall behind. But will things change? Let's move on to the shaded circle question. Let me tell you guys, this was a question that even Oven Mini was getting wrong multiple times. But let's look at these models, how they perform. Gemma 327B gets a 0 out of 10. Mistral 0. Llama 0. GPT 4.1 7. Absolutely awesome. A 7 out of 10. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite gets a 4 out of 10. And Mistral 3.2 gets a 6 out of 10. Just look at the difference between Mistral 3.1 and Mistral 3.2. It was getting 0 and now it's getting 6. Can you even imagine? Even I used this question to test Oven Mini and Oven. Now these models are getting it right. With having said that, let's look at the total scores. Gemma gets a 35 out of 50. Mistral gets a 26. Llama gets 26 again. GPT 4.1 Nano gets a 40 out of 50. Impressive performance. Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite gets a 42 out of 50. And Mistral gets a 37 out of 50. Here you can see Mistral Small 3.2 is not the best, whereas the newer Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite is good in Max. The performance in Max also depends on the number of tokens a model generates. And if you look at Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, it has a thinking version as well. So in the thinking, we know that it will generate a lot of chain of thought tokens, but even the non-thinking version generates a lot of tokens. And sometimes I've seen that when a model generates a lot of tokens, usually its max performance has been good. That could be one of the reasons why the smaller models like O1 mini, like O4 mini, and all are getting good performance in max, because since they are very fast and cheap, they generate more tokens than their bigger brothers like O3. That is just an idea that I have. Having said that, if you look at the model recommendations, this will change. As said before, best efficient reasoning model will be Mistral Small 3.2 and best efficient max model will now be Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Having said that, let's move on to the next section, that is best efficient coding model. And the model that currently holds the title is Llama 4 Scout. Will that change? Let's see. Not comparing the older models like Mistral Small 3.1 or Gemma 327B or GPT 4.1 Nano, because these are already tested in previous videos and Llama 4 Scout came out to be better than them. So we are testing the previous best and Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite and Mistral Small 3.2, which are the newer models that I've released. These are pretty small models, and on top of that they are the non-thinking variants. So we'll start with simple questions, then we'll slowly move on to harder and harder questions. So the first question that we're asking is, write a snake game in Python using PyQt5. Let's see what they come up with. Let's send this question to all three models and wait for the response. Let's also see which model actually, finishes first. Now you can already see Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite is already done. It has generated a lot of tokens actually, followed by Llama 4 Scout on the second place, and Mistral 3.2 is still generating, and now it's done. Let's look at Llama 4 Scout. Let's copy the code, paste that, and let's run it. And that is a working snake game, and it also looks very good, guys. The score is increasing, we are able to eat the apple, and let's see what happens on collision. Okay, game over, your score is 9. Do you want to play again? Yes, and it works. A perfect game from Llama 4 Scout. That is nice. Let's move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's copy the code, paste that. So immediately we see 2 errors, guys. That is not nice. Let's run it. Okay, it says QPen is not defined. Did you mean open? So that is an error from Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. What about Mistral 3.2? Let's do one thing. Let's copy this. Let's paste that. And immediately we don't see any kind of errors. Let's run it. And that didn't run. That is a fail, guys. Let's move on to the next question. So we'll ask another Python question. Code the game of Tetris in Python. So let's see what they come up with. Okay, we have got the responses from all three models. Let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. Let's paste the code and let's run it. And now you can see it actually doesn't work, guys. The pieces are falling, but you can see it's kind of glitching over here and we don't see any more pieces. So that's kind of a fail. Let's move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lites. Let's copy the code. Let's paste that and let's run it. Okay, it says press any key to play. Okay, and that looks absolutely awesome. The pieces are falling. We are also able to see the next shape, but I think the next shape doesn't match what is coming. Okay, now it says the next shape will be an L. Let's see. Okay, so we have the Z kind of a shape. Let's see if that comes. Now that didn't come. We actually saw a square. So it's kind of inconsistent. Sometimes it is coming up with correct pieces and sometimes it is not coming up with the correct pieces. And one of my subscriber actually corrected me. We actually see a score increase when we completely fill up one row, but let's leave that aside. So once we hit the top, you can see actually the game should complete and it should be game over, but it's kind of glitching at the top. So mostly it's a correct response with some minor issues at the end. Comparatively a better response than what Llama 4 Scout came up with. Let's see what Mistral gives us. Let's copy the code, paste that, and immediately we don't see any kind of errors or warnings. Nice, let's run it. And again, a complete response. So visually it doesn't look as good as what Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite came up with. So we'll try to look at any errors if there are any. So we are clearly seeing the next piece. We'll have to verify if it is consistent or does it have the same issue like Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. So the next piece is going to be a square. Let's see. And we do get a square, and after that we are going to get an L. Let's see. Okay, that is what we got. Next is going to be a Z, and that is what we got. Let's see what happens when we completely fill up the board. So it's going to get filled up and it says game over. So comparatively I would say visually it's not as good as Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, but comparatively it was a better response. So this is a point for Mistral Small 3.2. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, can you draw a dragon in a web page using HTML, CSS and JS? So side view of the dragon and give your best implementation in one single code. So let's send this and we'll look at the responses. Okay, we have got the responses from all three models. Let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. Let's open up HTML viewer and paste that and let's preview it. Okay, so this is a dragon according to Llama 4 Scout. We do see a face and just squiggly lines over here and there. It looks like a kid's drawing. Nothing much to say. A bad response. But it's kind of expected since these are very small models. Let's move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer, let's paste that and let's preview it. Okay, so comparatively I would say this is significantly better. Although if we compare overall responses of all models, it is kind of bad. I think these light colored shapes are wings and we do have a tail and two legs and this represents the head, I guess. So it has tried to do something, and whatever it is way better than what Llama 4 Scout has come up with. Let's look at Mistral 3.2 if it surprises us. So let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer and paste that and let's preview it. Okay, so we have a breathe fire button. Let's see what happens. Okay, so nothing is happening. I mean, just have a look at the third one. It doesn't even look like an animal. So clearly that's not a good one, and all have given a terrible responses. But if we are doing a comparative analysis, I would say Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite was better. So I'll give a point to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. So the next question is, create a JavaScript animation of falling letters. Let's see what they come up with. Okay, we have got the responses. Let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer and let's paste and preview it. Okay, we do see a ball and falling letters. That is nice to see. Although the letters are kind of floating and this doesn't seem to be Earth's gravity. They are a bit too bouncy, but interface is smooth and it works. So keeping them aside, let's move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer, let's paste that and let's preview it. Okay, we do have a ball and falling letters, but they are getting kind of stuck and they are not bouncy. As you can see, so they are falling and also they are not kind of interacting with the ball. You can see they are just going past it. So not very good response. Let's move on to Mistral Small 3.2. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer and let's paste that and let's preview it. Okay, so we don't see anything. It's a black screen actually. So it's clear who is the winner. Clearly it's going to be Llama 4 Scout. So 1 more point for Llama 4 Scout. So in this next question, let's ask them something different. So we are asking, generate the best web page you can build using HTML, CSS and JS and in one single code. So let's see who comes up with the best web page. So now you can see Llama 4 Scout and Mistral are still generating and Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite is already done. So if speed is something that you want, then there is no comparison, it's Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. And we are consistently seeing Llama 4 Scout coming on second and Mistral Small 3.2 taking some time. Okay, so we are done. We have got the responses. Let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. Let's open up HTML viewer, let's paste that and let's preview it. And we'll open up it in full screen. Okay, so welcome to our website, home, services, portfolio, contact. Let's look at if the buttons are working. So services works, portfolio works and contact. Okay, so it looks like a basic web page. We have a learn more button and that will obviously not work because we have asked for a single web page. It says our services, service 1, service 2, service 3, and we have some images that it has fetched from the internet is representative of the projects, and we have a get in touch form. Let's see if we are able to type something. Okay, so I'm able to type and send message. Okay, when I hit send message, it says enter an email address. So let me mention my email address. Okay, when I hit send, it says message sent successfully. So kind of a basic response, nothing special. So let's keep it aside and move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer, paste that and let's preview it. And okay, right off the back, you can see it has more colors, background, particles and things like that. Let's move on to about and you can see about me, my skills, and it shows featured project. It hasn't used any images, but you can see right off the back it looks comparatively way better. It has also come up with icons and once I hover over them, you can see they kind of rise up and turn into green. Yeah, but it doesn't have some kind of contact form or anything like that, but visually it looks good. Having said that, let's move on to Mistral Small 3.2. Let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer, let's paste that and let's preview it. And okay, it was able to fetch a real image and you can see it is kind of floating. The interface looks quite similar to what Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite came up with. So if I hit the explore features button, you can see our features, innovative design, high performance, security first, and We have numbers over here, but they are set to 0. What our clients say, it was able to fetch actual images of people. You can have a look at them. I don't know who these people are and where it got the images from, but the testimonials also looks good. Ready to transform your business, get in touch. We have a proper footer right at the bottom. So I'll have to say that comparatively I would say Mistral Small 3.2 actually came up with a good response, but I have to say there is no about section, so each model has its good and bad. Having said that, one more thing you have to identify is both of these responses, one from Llama 4 Scout and Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, they look good in this portrait aspect ratio, whereas that's not the case with Mistral Small 3.2, but it has the menu bar and things like that. It was able to fix everything, but the image is kind of hanging somewhere, so it is kind of tough between Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite and Mistral. I do personally think that Mistral is kind of better, so I'll give that a win for Mistral. So let's move on to the next question. This is a question based on Python. So in this question they have to write a Python code for a hollow circle with an opening. There are 2 balls inside it, and whenever a ball exits, 2 new balls appear. So it has to get the bouncing of the balls against the wall of the circles and everything right. So let's see what they come up with. Okay, so we have got the responses from all models. Let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. We'll paste the code and immediately we don't see any kind of errors. Let's run it, and okay, that didn't run. It is asking for a WAV file, and that is the case with most of the models. So we'll just ask no need of audio, give me complete code without audio. So let's send this, and meanwhile let's see what Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite has come up with. Let's paste that, and okay, immediately we actually see an error. Let's run it. Even this is actually asking for a WAV file, so we'll mention the same thing, and let's send this as well. Let's look at what Mistral 3.2 has come up with. Let's copy the code, let's paste that, and immediately we don't see any kind of errors. Let's run it, and okay, we do see a ball and a few balls inside it, but I don't think it's that functional. The border is very thick and we don't see any kind of bounciness. They are kind of getting stuck at the end, so that is a fail. Let's look at responses from other models. So let's look at Llama 4 Scout. Let's copy the code, let's paste that, and let's run it, and okay, we do see balls and they are kind of bouncy. Comparatively we can say that it is better than what Mistral came up with, but clearly it kind of has a sector over here. Balls are not able to move past this, so it has this issue, but comparatively it's better. Let's look at Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's copy the code, let's paste that, and let's run it, and I don't see anything actually, so I don't know what to say. I will have to give that a fail, I guess. So again, Llama 4 Scout actually wins this one. So this is the final question, guys. They have to create a stunning and detailed single page HTML website about the solar system, and it has to have animations. We also called it scrollimations. This is the animations that you see in websites like Apple, where as you scroll you see different animations and objects appearing and disappearing. So they have to come up with something like that. Let's see what they come up with. So Llama 4 Scout and Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite are done. Mistral is still generating and it will take some time. By the time we can have a test of these. So let's start off with Llama 4 Scout. Let's open up HTML viewer, let's paste that, and let's preview it. Let's open up the full screen. So it says the sun, and it was not able to fetch the image, guys. Let's scroll. This is Mercury and this is Venus, Earth. It is trying to get the background color right. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. So it's just a scrolling slideshow kind of thing. We don't see any kind of animations or things like that. So Llama 4 Scout, based on what we're able to see, seems to be a good model in coding, but it's not very aesthetic. It doesn't have that aesthetic performance. Let's move on to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. Let's open up HTML viewer, let's preview it, and okay, the sun. We have a different cursor. It says the sun, Mercury, Venus. We have the Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and you can see it's kind of increasing in size. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. So comparatively it's way better, and yeah, it was not able to fetch images for many planets, but yeah, it looks significantly better. Let's see what Mistral has come up with. It has done generating, so let's copy the code, open up HTML viewer, let's paste that, and let's preview it. Okay, it says loading celestial. It says the sun, our radiant star, Mercury, the swift planet, Venus, Earth's sister but not so close, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. So it was not able to fetch the images, unlike the previous question where we asked to actually generate the website. So again, it's a close call between Mistral and Gemini 2.5 Flash, but I think you can see the placeholders for the planets are actually rotating, and also it looks well formatted. I would give this again a win to Mistral, and with that we'll end the coding section. So if you look at the total scores, that is 3 points for Llama 4 Scout, just 1 point for Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, and 3 points for Mistral Small 3.2. So clearly we were able to see when it comes to front-end aesthetics and design, Mistral is good at it. And for rest of the things, and in general, Llama 4 Scout still remains one of the good models for coding when it comes to efficient models, but it doesn't have the aesthetics and front end design. So maybe for front end you can go with Mistral Small 3.2, but when it comes to back end you can go with Llama 4 Scout. So having a wrap up, we have already covered reasoning and max. The best reasoning model was Mistral Small 3.2 and the best max model was Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. So what about these sections? So the best efficient reasoning model will be, as I said, Mistral Small 3.2. The best max model will be Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. The best efficient coding model will still remain Llama 4 Scout because it doesn't have the designs, but you can get it right iteratively. But the core logic and everything, Llama 4 Scout gets it right. But the best efficient overall model, the one that you can blindly pick for most of the tasks, will be Mistral Small 3.2 because whether it's reasoning, it was the best. When it comes to max, we clearly saw it's in third position, not that far behind. And coding, of course, it was good in front end and not very bad in the back end. So this was the testing, guys. I hope I was able to give you a clear information about all these models. If you liked the effort, please to hit the like button. That really helps me a lot and the channel as well. Thank you for that. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one.